Hello, 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 and welcome out to another show. This is a little bit different for a main show. We didn't really know what to do here because usually we don't record or have a show out on either a Canadian holiday or in this case an American holiday, and we've had sort of two in a row. But at the same time, Birdman and I watched the Canadian Game Awards just a few days ago, and we were like, do we do a separate show specifically for that if we have time, or do we incorporate it in the main show whenever we do the next one? Well, we've sort of come to a compromise, as Birdman himself is very busy, has a lot going on right now as of the last few days, so he wasn't going to be able to do a sit down for a full extended regular show with the news, the weird news, intros, outros, reviews, and all that sort of stuff. So the compromise is, instead of the news and weird news, we're doing one segment specifically in the middle of the show that is going to be our discussion on the Canadian Game Awards, what won, what we liked, things that surprised us when it comes to what was nominated or what won, as well as just sort of our thoughts, I think, on the Canadian game industry as a whole. As we could do many more topic shows like that in the future, but we wanted to make sure we talked about it because, especially for our listeners in Canada, it's cool. And then also for our listeners abroad, it's interesting to see a spotlight shone on this particular topic. And then I already had a couple reviews ready to go for the show. Birdman's saving his for the next week. So it's a little different. It's not a review show this week. It's also not a regular main show, but we're going to have it under that banner. So what we're going to do is have a review of mine, and then we'll have our discussion on the Canadian Game Awards, another review, and then I'll come out at the end to close it out and say sort of what's going on programming wise, as we're getting pretty darn close to the busiest week or two that we usually do in a year. So beyond that, anything else that I've done, as we usually talk about, what's new with us? What have we been doing? I've been watching some stuff for review, playing some games, the standard usual stuff. I did happen to get out and had a chance to go see the brand new Star Wars movie, The Mandalorian and Grogu. I might have thoughts on that at a later date when I have them percolate a little bit, but I can say that it felt more like a TV movie or like a mini series that was put in theaters. It didn't just have act 1, 2, 3. It had 7 acts, and it was kind of odd. It was still entertaining, and the crowd enjoyed it, but I don't know, man. That's something we'll have to talk about, I think, at a later date. But yeah, that's what I've done. I plan on seeing the He-Man Masters of the Universe movie, not necessarily because I think it looks great, but I have a doctor's appointment in a couple of weeks, and it lines up, it looks like, where I'll go to the doctor at 2 p.m. and then there's a 3:30 movie showing. So I'm like, may as well go do that because it's right within the same plaza. It's only a 5-10 minute walk from the doctor's office. So I was like, I may as well do that. So we'll see what that happens. And that's sort of like a treat to myself, I guess, after all of the stuff that's coming up in the next 2 weeks. So I think we're going to go straight into one of my reviews. I'm not sure which one we're airing yet, but we're going to go to one of my reviews. We'll be back with our discussion with Birdman and I on the Canadian Game Awards.
Hello! Welcome to Zephyr Town! What really puts our town on the map is our Bazaar! Oh, I can't tell you how much it warms my heart to see a youngster like yourself take interest in honest farm work. Anything you harvest on your farm can be sold at the Bazaar. We hold it once a week, and people come from far and wide to stroll through the stalls. And your performance today has given me no doubt that you'll be the one to put this place back on the map. Let us all do our part to breathe some life back into this bazaar and make it the grandest bazaar anyone's ever seen.
Good job.
Oh, cute.
I suppose I'd say that I like the confident type.
And I realize I really do like this town.
Sometimes it's hard not to just get comfy and stick around.
Someday, this bazaar will be the best in the world.
Our town has a bright future ahead of it. I just know it.
Alex, the producer here, and our friends at Marvelous USA have sent a review copy of Story of Seasons Grand Bazaar to check out. Now, if you're wondering, wait a minute, didn't we already hear a review of this last summer? That's right, we played it on the Nintendo Switch 2. It was one of the early, I would say, launch window titles, and when we were doing that flurry of coverage back then, I can't believe it's already been a year, we covered it and thought, yeah, this is a pretty fun game. And it was previously available, I believe, like last August. So just at the tail end of the Switch 2's, couple month launch period. And it was at that point, it was available on Switch, Switch 2, and PC. Now it's getting full bespoke versions on the Xbox Series X and S, as well as PS5. And I had a chance to quickly check it out on PlayStation 5. And I can say that there is... I would say an improvement to the overall feel of it, because when it was a launch title on Switch 2 basically burst its way through by just brute forcing what was there on the Switch 1 with some enhancements, playing it in 4K, that sort of thing. Here you're getting maybe a little more robust of a background. Playing it on PS5 is a much more powerful system for the kind of graphics that this does. This is not using ray tracing or anything. It's your standard raster graphics on, a system. So playing it in 4K, no problem. I was able to do a bit of a comparison, nothing too in-depth if you want that. That's the kind of thing you have to look at a YouTuber that goes in depth on frame rates. And I can say this, no frame rate drops, good performance, fast loading, probably faster loading, honestly, on my PS5 than it was on the Switch 2. And just... it's a good game. If you want to listen to the review of the overall content of it, you can go back to our stuff from last year, because the core of the game itself is going to be basically the same. I would say there's going to be patches and different things that are released for it. Keep an eye out for that. Obviously, there's performance stuff. No issues with it. It's already a charming visual game. Audio is good. Performance is good. Beyond that, I can say it's just a good port. It's a solid port, and now it's available on a platform that has a much larger install base. I think people are going to get a kick out of it. So if you didn't pick it up already via Steam or the Nintendo Switch platform or Switch 2, then, Xbox is going to be basically the same, I think, as PS5. You're not going to really notice a major difference there. And if the PS5 is anything to go by, it's a solid port. I think you'll have a good time with it. I'll put a link in the description where you can check it out. Well worth your time. Always good to see games like this, especially in this franchise, come out on multiple platforms. Even if it is timed exclusive initially, it's cool that it's now on everything. And I'm keeping my eyes open. I want to see what comes next from the Story of Seasons brand. As the next time, I'm going to assume that they're probably thinking Switch 2 in mind with its core development, and then we'll see how that scales to who knows what other platforms are going to be available at the time of that release. But as it stands now, Story of Seasons Grand Bazaar, it's a good release, already previously on other platforms. Now, if you're a fan and you want to pick it up on PlayStation 5 or Xbox, you can totally do that, and it works just great.
And now it's time for another special feature.
Tickle.
Alrighty, so this is a little bit different. This is where the normal tech news, geek news would be, but instead we're doing a special segment, Birdman and myself, on the Canadian Game Awards. Isn't that right, buddy?
Yeah, this was something I was very surprised. Just the fact that, we have never gone to these things. And although we were invited, we were literally planning on going up until a day or two before, when Blair had to work and I had to work, and it's just I can't travel without someone safely yet.
And I had been looking initially, and I could get a train to get out there, but there was no train coming back, and there wasn't enough time to make arrangements for a hotel and all this stuff. It's it was one of those things where maybe next year we'll plan it so that we can be around it. And I also checked at the Go Transit. Fingers crossed, is supposed to have commuter train service by then for our area. So that would mean every hour until midnight.
Yeah, which would have been cool to actually kind of go to this. So I'm actually very familiar where this took place. This took place in and around the Toronto Metro Toronto Convention Center in the John Bassett Theater, I want to say it was. I've been in there for panels for like Fan Expo and stuff like that. I think that's where I met the Master Chief. I want to say back in 2008.
Is that right down? Where would that be? Is
not too far from Union.
Is that okay? Okay, it's not where I went to the Nintendo event. I don't think that.
I don't think so. You were closer to the waterfront, weren't you?
Yeah, was it Labatt Stadium? There was some outdoor stadium-y thing there, and then there was like an indoor building, and then there was something else.
Yeah, I think you were close to where the X normally happens, if I'm not mistaken.
That's where it was. It was Exhibition Place where I was.
Yeah.
It was right near, I guess, near where the old Maple Leaf Gardens was.
Right. I also had a brief opportunity to chat with Mark Meir before he went to the show, because I'm friends with him on Facebook. I'm like, hey man, have an awesome show. It'd be great to see you and Jen. Can't make it this year, but go out there and have a blast. And I will say, from a hosting perspective, they actually had a really good kind of chemistry between those two. Mark is a ham in no matter what he does.
You just start waiting. It's like, when's he gonna start making his faces? And they're all good. It's like, he knows what he's doing. He's having fun up there.
Yeah, like my wife describes Mark as the most delightful weirdo she's ever met, and that's very apt. Mark is permanently on. There is no Mark is just Mark, and that's what I love. Even Jen was having fun too.
He loves to clown around while being professional. That's the best way to describe him.
Yeah, like there's never any hint of malice in him. It's just like, you know what? There was a problem. We're gonna have fun with it, and that's one thing. That's one thing I will say about the Game Awards. There were some technical problems, but when they came up, they didn't draw attention to it in a negative way. It was like, the teleprompter is frozen, so I'm just gonna wait for them. And then just kind of
happens at all live shows, especially live shows that, they've been on a few years, but that are growing and have the growing pains of any regular show like this. It reminded me of some trade shows and stuff that I've been to, and they roll with it, have fun with it. The most important part is everybody on stage was having fun. Everybody, in the audience appeared to be having fun, rolled with it. So that makes it more interesting. I would not want to see a show where everybody is just like stiff as a board and boring. You cannot say this was a boring show. This was an entertaining show, even when it had the few hiccups that we saw.
I mean, one thing I will say about this award show compared to other ones I've had a chance to attend, like I myself, I've been on the ground at the Spike TV Video Game Awards. I've done stuff at like PAX and stuff like that. This had really good pacing. Like, there was very rarely any moments of dead air. I mean, there was the odd moment when someone had to come up from further back in the room to on stage, but that's a big, whatever. But overall, though, this was very well paced. They were fairly close to on time, because this thing started at like 8 p.m. last Thursday and ran right up until 10 o'clock, maybe 5 minutes over. They did have it live streamed on Twitch. They had it live streamed on YouTube. I watched, I think, the Twitch feed, I want to say.
Yeah, I did as well, because that was the main feed. And then the VOD, for anybody that wants to watch it, will be on YouTube.
Yeah. So this show was dominated by one particular game, which I'm just doing the count right now. Won 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 awards for sure.
Wait, what?
6 awards over the course of the entire night. And I guess, I got sent the awards list from John, who was our liaison to all.
Yeah,
this.
I made my own list. I missed a couple, so I'm glad that we have this. But yeah, like it was kind of it was surprising. I'll say this first before we get into it. Some of these games I was surprised were Canadian.
Yeah, I didn't expect to see Battlefield 6 on here.
And from when Carl and I spoke, if you haven't listened, listen to our interview from a couple weeks back. He did mention it's a situation where if the game is obviously wholly created in Canada, that's obviously Canadian. I said, what counts as CanCon, essentially? And he said, if the primary studio that does the vast majority of the work is in Canada, like, then it's that. So for instance, like if it was an Ubisoft title, well, Ubisoft has like 15 studios that work on their games. Well, if the primary design studio is here, so for instance, like Assassin's Creed is usually done in Montreal, but they might have 3 or 4 teams in Europe and other parts of the world, it would still be considered a Canadian game because the vast majority of the design and production was done here with some outsourcing. The same goes for a game might be an American or European game, but use Canadian voice talent as the actors. Well, they can be nominated for the voice acting category. And the same goes for maybe a Canadian did the musical score, even though it's a game that was made entirely abroad except for the music. Well, the music score can be nominated because that's a Canadian artist who worked on it. So all that stuff, I was like, okay, that makes sense. So that's a situation I think that we're in with some of these titles when you're like Battlefield. It's like I didn't think it was Canadian either. I didn't think that, and that's a similar situation with the game that we mentioned won and swept most of the major awards, which was South of Midnight.
Which is something I know is available via Xbox Game Pass. I didn't play it, but I do remember we covered it pretty extensively when the E3 announcement trailer came out and it was part of the Xbox showcase. I was looking, that looks really cool because it was unlike anything I'd ever seen before, like this southern Southern American, but not South American, kind of bayou mysticism story, but it was so fantastic.
Yeah, it was like voodoo and like Creole inspired and everything. And like I played it right away, when it hit Game Pass. I played it on PC because I at that point had already switched to mostly playing Game Pass games on PC versus on the console because I actually had a powerful enough PC to do so. And I loved it. I remember thinking, oh, this has great accessibility options. It's the right pacing and gameplay style for me. It's not uber like crunchy with like how get good you have to be. Had a really good narrative, and it was also not overly long. It wasn't too short. It was just sort of like the right speed. It was better than a Game Pass game needed to be, if that makes any sense.
It really does, because like those games, I mean, I'm not saying that the studios don't work hard on producing stuff like that, but with something that, it's on Game Pass, sometimes you get some real bangers and sometimes you don't.
So sometimes you get ones that were designed specifically for that service to fill a gap. This felt like a regular like AAA title that would have been released before the age of Game Pass. And Compulsion Games that made it, I did not know they were Canadian. I had figured they were an American studio.
Same here.
I didn't know, but they're actually located in the Westmount district of Montreal.
Okay.
And I was like, oh, that's cool. The other games that they had made were Contrast. If you remember, that was I think it was PS3, PS4. It was one of the earlier titles, and that it was like a AA game. And then the game in 2018 that you probably have heard of, if you haven't played it, was We Happy Few.
Yes, I remember that. That had a lot of interesting advertising, and if anything, this studio has a really that's because they won the award for it. They have a very distinctive art style, and
yes.
I really dig that art style.
So
it's so visually striking that you stick with it. Now, I did make a joke in our private chat. I was like, if I see this key art one more time tonight, to which I would see it 5 more times, but that just shows the strength of how well that studio functions. And I would argue it had a lot of competition.
Well, that's the thing too. Like there was, in looking at it, you can still see, what it was up against. It was up against 33 Immortals, which is, I think, another Game Pass title. Eternal Strands, which was from some former BioWare devs that broke off on their own. Marvel Cosmic Invasion, and Lost Records Bloom and Rage. And it's like they all had good art direction for all for different things. They're nothing, none of these were similar. They're all very different styles, but very stylistic. And I can see why South of Midnight won art direction, because it looked like you were watching a stop motion claymation. And that was one of the first games to have done that. And I do recommend it. I hope it brings more people to it. I believe it was recently in the end of March released on PS5 and Switch 2 as well, digitally. Because even though it was published by Microsoft Game Studios, it wasn't, I don't think, it was never planned to be an exclusive. At least, who knows? Maybe now all the companies are starting to go back to exclusivity, but you can still play it on Game Pass, right? So it's worth checking out. And looking at some of the other stuff, like the next category was game design, was Hell Is Us. That's a game that we didn't get to cover. That was like last summer that came out, I think. To me, I remember it being like very European looking, but I didn't know that it was made here. But game design makes sense because it's like a lot of exploring and then going back and forth. I wouldn't say Metroidvania because it's like big open world, but that sort of thing where lots of weird, cool things to discover in it. But
sort of like Metroidvania adjacent, I guess you could say.
Yeah, a little bit, or like the FromSoft kind of games, like when you're exploring, figuring things out. It's like, what if FromSoft mixed with like Resident Evil?
Yeah, I'd say that's probably a pretty good way.
So it might be one to check out at some point too. But like best score and soundtrack with South of Midnight makes perfect sense. Again, good competition within that category. Is Marvel Cosmic Invasion for that.
That one had no chance though.
But it's nice to be nominated.
Well, yeah, like looking at these, like I've heard snippets of the South of Midnight score, and that from a score and soundtrack design, like again, I have a very small musical background. It's not great, but in order to capture that particular vibe and feel, that's a lot of research. That's a lot of talking with experts to make sure like we're not culturally appropriating this. We're going to make sure this sounds as authentic as possible, because part of the appeal of the South of Midnight game is it has to immerse you in that atmosphere. You have to literally feel like you're a part of that soundscape and that part of that environment. And by having a really good score and soundtrack, that can only help the immersion. So honestly, that one, the second I saw that it was nominated, like, yep, that's a win. There is no question.
Because like Eternal Strands and Marvel Cosmic Invasion, good scores. Assassin's Creed Shadows is good. That would have traditionally given a good competition. And the lover of like the old Life is Strange games in me saw Lost Records, Bloom and Rage, fantastic score, but some of it was created for the game, but the vast majority is licensed from indie artists. Yeah, I think one or two songs were made specifically for it by those indie artists, but the vast majority of it, like those style of games, is just really good curated music that fits the mood. Yeah. Whereas South of Midnight is completely original score, and the songs that have lyrics and everything in it are written for the levels and bosses in the game.
Yeah, like that's the level of care that you can't match.
The best way to describe it for somebody who's never played the game or doesn't know anything about it is like, do you remember the Disney movie Princess and the Frog?
Mm-hmm.
It's like that, but darker gothic, and you're playing in an action game.
See, and that really sells it for me, because that's actually one of my favorite Disney movies of the last like 20 years. And it's hard to believe that movie came out in, I want to say 2009. Like, holy shit.
I know, right? But it's that's what it evokes if you want to have anything like close to compare it to it.
Oh yeah. And then the next kind of category was best narrative. Again, a lot of strong contenders, but the second South of Midnight was nominated. Like, all right, cool, just give them the award.
Yep. Similar nominees. The only other one was Wanderstop. I think that's the one that was the indie game where it's like, at first it seems like a cozy game, and then the more you realize it's like there's more like dark aspects to it. So it's like cool, but this again, like South of Midnight could be turned into like a movie or TV franchise.
It wouldn't surprise me if someone takes a stab at, you know what? If Crave was looking for a cool movie, if you got the proper budget, this would be neat. It's not going to happen because Crave, but you never know. You never know.
If depending on how these buyouts happen, if HBO Max wants a really cool, or Apple TV wants a really cool series or mini series or something, adapt that.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, we're going to be waiting for years between the Last of Us and Life is Strange and God of War.
Give us some spooky, like, somewhat Haitian voodoo, New Orleans type stuff. Give us some spooky stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it could be awesome. Now, this next one was Best Performance. The guy who won this was Elias. I can't pronounce his last name.
Elias Tufexis.
Yeah, Tufexis, and he's known mostly as the voice of Adam Jensen from the Deus Ex series. I know you were very excited for that. He most recently had
he's been in a lot of stuff.
Most recently Star Trek Discovery, actually.
Yes, and as well as, like, you would have heard him as multiple voices across different Ubisoft titles, like the Assassin's Creed games. Mm-hmm. Probably most prominently known in the public as the voice of Adam Jensen in the two most recent Deus Ex titles. Like you said, he has a very distinctive voice.
Mm-hmm.
And the other actors, Erica Luttrell and Momoa Tamada, Peter Shinkota, and Olivia Laporte, all good performances. I couldn't necessarily say that Elias, in my head, it was like, should he have won? Because it's one of the few games we didn't play from this list.
Well, to look at some of the other actors that were nominated in that category, as much as I love Assassin's Creed Shadows, the actor that was nominated from that franchise, like, if you'd given me just a little bit more, like if that character had been more involved in the narrative, maybe, or if other characters could have been picked, but clearly they couldn't be because they didn't fit the Canadian qualification, I'm guessing. And I thought the woman who did Nawe did a fantastic job, but
yeah, exactly. I know what you mean.
Yeah, it's like, okay. I mean, I like the character sheet because she's basically like an orphan who tries to get revenge, but you can recruit her into your ninja shinobi clan thing. And she's really cool. I really like the character. I just wish they picked a better clip of her to showcase her abilities because she's got some really funny one-liners. And
there's a bunch. And the same with, like, his Battlefield character. And then for Lost Records is a great game. I don't know if the actors go, like, it's all good performances, but I don't think they go that one step above, like where it's like really stands out. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So everybody nominated clearly deserved to be nominated, but we also, like, this is one where we both had to put our hands up, like, well, we didn't play every single game in this category, so we don't necessarily have an opinion. I'm going to assume Elias probably brought it.
Yeah, exactly. And then the next category, this was yet another shoe-in. I mean, again, wonderful nominees, but the second that key art came up for South of Midnight, we just talked about score and soundtrack. With audio design, was there any real surprise that this was not going to win? Again, to have a game like that, a lot of games that build upon atmosphere, unless you have really good audio, it doesn't matter whether you have got like John Williams doing your score, or Hans Zimmerman or Tyler Bates or whoever. That's cool. But unless it fits the moment and knows when to pull back and when not, if enemies sound squishy when you hit them, if your guns have the right amount of recoil, sound design is an art. It really is. And for a game like South of Midnight, which is already an artistic game in and of itself, I'm not surprised at all.
I also played it with headphones on, and it had a really good, stereo spacing. And then I played it with my surround set, and I'm playing it in the living room on my computer, but in my Dolby surround, like proper speakers, not a sound bar. And it had full spatial audio for everything coming at you from the left, right. And like, when some of the bad guys and spirits are taunting you, they're sometimes taunting you from the back right or the back left or above you. And it sound like there was fully immersive sound, which you don't always get with games. So it was very cool to see that.
Mm-hmm. And then the next category moves on to best PC game. I did not expect to see Battlefield 6 here, like at all.
And I think maybe it's one of those cases where, in looking at the games, it was Aloft, Battlefield 6, Foundation, Eternal Strands, and Ambrosia Sky Act 1. Personal, I think this was a case of there wasn't a whole lot of PC exclusive or PC primary games developed in Canada that hit real big last year.
Yeah, and looking at some of the B-roll footage they showed for some of the nominees, some of those games look really cool, but I'm not a PC gamer, so...
I played Eternal Strands, and I played it for review. I will be honest, I did not care for the loop. It just wasn't for me. It was very well put together, and I was like, well, I'm done with this. It's not for me. And I didn't play any of the others.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not somebody to judge this. I play games on PC, but it takes a certain genre or a certain style to really jump out at me. So in seeing this, I could see, I'm like, Battlefield 6, that's clearly the highest selling out of all these for worldwide.
Yeah, I mean, for me to play a PC game, I play dating simulators because I'm weird. I play
because you're fun.
Yeah, because I'm fun. I play visual novels. I play strategy games like your Civilizations, your StarCraft, stuff like that. I'll play older games like Fallout New Vegas and Fallout 3 so I can mod the ever-living piss out of them. And that's pretty much about it. But for a shooter, where do most people play shooters? They're on PC. So I can't say that I'm surprised at this one at all, which brings us right to our next category of best console game. The key art strikes again. Yeah. South of Midnight. Like once this won best console, this pretty much signaled to me this next big award it was going to win. So what more can we really kind of say about South of Midnight?
I'll say this. I didn't play it on console. I played it on PC. So it's best PC game for me, I guess, in this category.
Okay, fair enough. And then best indie game. This looked really cool. Wonderstop. This is where you said this is like the cozy game that takes a hard right.
Yeah, I think it's like there's psychological issues with the main character and you start to realize it as you play. I think that's what this game was. And I remember thinking, this looks cool. And then we didn't have a chance to check it out on the show because we got so busy. So maybe I'll have to jump back and check it out.
Now, these next two categories, we're just gonna breeze over simply because me and Alex were not experts in this. Best mobile game. I mean, all of you guys know I play Pokemon Go. I might play Dragon Ball Legends. I don't play a lot of games on my phone. It's not my thing. So
I haven't played a game on my phone in at least 2 years. I've played one game for review on my phone in 9 years of being with you, and it was a port of what was it? Moonlighter.
You're right.
And it was like, I was like, that's cool. I do not play mobile games, and it's not for lack of. It's just they're not usually our thing. It's also not usually what our audience wants. So
yeah, I mean, for a mobile game for me, I play Pokemon Go because it gets me outside. For a game like Rainbow Six Mobile, I'm guessing that's a game I would just play at home. And if I want to play a game, why would I not play it on a console? But whatever. Next one,
but obviously, congrats because there's a lot of people that are playing them.
Yeah, exactly. And then moving on to best VR versus / augmented reality. I've only played VR twice in my life, so I really can't speak to this category. Alex, do you have any insight?
I have MetaQuest 2 back when it was called Oculus Quest 2, and I haven't turned it on in 3 years. And I don't even know if my system is even compatible with the newer games. Honestly, none of our audience has the consoles or wants them. We never got a PSVR 2. Maybe when the Steam VR new thing comes out, we'll look at it, but it's not a priority, I think, with the vast majority of game players. It's actually reverted to being more niche from where it was. I think it's a really cool space to be in, but we have nothing to say because we haven't played any of these, unfortunately. Yeah. Congrats to everybody involved. Maybe we'll see how VR goes. I think, unfortunately, at the moment, VR has become a complete luxury as in general, like if
I
computers
just see
have done
people playing poker. That's all I see people playing in VR.
it's poker, shooter games, and Beat Saber. If I turn on my MetaQuest again, it'll be to play Beat Saber because I love that shit. I just haven't gotten around to it. The batteries are probably super dead. I'll have to charge them up. But it's not me, being like, oh, VR bad. It's the vast majority of people don't have VR.
Well,
And
yeah,
so
it's just like it's one of those. I wouldn't even call it a fad. I don't think the technology has caught on with the average consumer because the technical requirements are so specific. And for you and I, we're both disabled gamers. Playing VR, you have to have a very specific set. Even when I've done my VR stuff in public, I have to make sure that I'm in the proper area. I have to make sure I talk with the VR tech, like, hey, am I going to be able to play this? I'm like, yeah, okay. And they're always like, give us a second to recalibrate it for you.
yeah,
It's
like
not so
for
bad.
me, you have to like. There's a bunch of stuff you have to do to like make it calibrated for you. It wasn't the best with the MetaQuest 2. It's probably gotten better with the 3 and whatever else has been out since. But it's also, I got that because it was $400 at the time during the pandemic. I got it like in 2020 or 2020. Yeah, it was 2020, I think, when I got it. And it was something you could do when you're at home. It was new and different. And the problem with it now is if you want it, the price to access it is minimum $700 or $800 to get a working system now. And that's if you have what's all encompassing one. If you want to go cheaper, you still have to have like $1,000 or $1,500 or $2,000 computer, or you have to get it for PlayStation, and then you have to worry about having like 10 good games to play on the PlayStation version. So it's not to be a downer. It's just that is probably a category that we are not likely to cover unless there's a major change in the way the vast majority of the market moves. That being said, I did look at the videos for all these. They look pretty cool.
Yeah. Now, this next category, I actually have a lot of experience with this particular title. Assassin's Creed Shadow was the winner for Best in Accessibility, and the award was actually presented by one of the guys who helped start this podcast, Steve Snowball Sailor. So congratulations to him on his hosting gig. You could tell he was a little bit nervous. His hands were shaking, but I think he did a really fantastic job in speaking to Canadian accessibility.
Good old boy.
Yeah.
It's like I remember thinking this is something that I knew he was going to be presenting ahead of time before I think it was announced, and I was thinking that's kind of cool. There's a little Twig connection there. You got one of the original hosts on there doing this, and it is cool that he presented this. Looking at the titles, there was Wanderstop, Squeakcross, which is a P-Cross game with mice. EA Sports FC 26. Don't know what accessibility was added there, but South of Midnight, I did mention when I did the review for it, or when I talked about it on the show last year, that it was pretty clear that they did a lot to get that, like with your difficulty settings, visual, all that stuff in there. And then Assassin's Creed Shadows, it was going to be a head-to-head between them, and nobody right now, even more so than Sony does. Sony does a pretty good job too with their first-party titles. Nobody has had a better run with accessibility options in games than Ubisoft the last 5-6 years.
And I will say this. Now, I played hundreds of hours of Assassin's Creed Shadows. I'm pretty sure I did use some of the accessibility settings. And I will say this. I don't remember them, but that's a good thing. And what do I mean by that is the settings are so invisible that it makes the gameplay experience, it simply is.
Yeah,
And
so some games, for an example, when they're like, hey, you can turn on accessibility settings to make the text bigger, and when you do it, it like breaks the immersion of the game. It's too big,
Yeah.
or the font was clearly not made to scale.
Yeah, or like here is something like, okay, we're going to change the difficulties of certain enemies, this, that, and the other thing. We're going to turn on one-hit assassinations and whatever. But again, it felt like it was just part of the experience, so much so that, okay, I'm going to adjust my settings, boop, 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 and there it is, bingo, bango, done. And yeah, I mean, that's the best view to me when it comes to accessibility is if someone wants to use those settings, they have the same gameplay experience as someone who doesn't want to use them, at least in terms of perception of playing the exact same game.
Perception of power and fun and just overall satisfaction. That's what needs to be there.
Yeah, exactly. Like, you're not going to feel like, for example, in Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, you get these streamlined progressions where you're basically the Terminator.
God mode for the first half of the game is cool to have, but doesn't necessarily mean it's quote unquote great accessibility. That's just turning off the bullet sponge mode or cutting down padded time. A good and great accessibility make it still feel challenging to the user, but that user's experience is catered more to them individually.
Exactly. Now, this next category, I hate saying this only because it draws attention to it in a somewhat negative way. And what I mean by that is, there was a technical glitch during the award show, and Mark and Jen played this off pretty funnily. They're like, and the winner for the best esports player, this guy.
Because the name didn't pop up, and this it would be a discussion, I think, for another time of, I think there's two factors in what happened here. Is one, esports is very insular in that if you're an esports fan or player, you're a big into that.
Yeah,
the vast majority of gamers and the gaming industry, media producers, the actual game creators, the vast majority don't really watch or understand what esports is outside of, like, we're talking like the top 10 players worldwide. I think there was and this maybe will change in the future, there's a visibility problem of, I don't know how many people know specifically Canadian esports players or teams unless you're already very entrenched in that community. So it was a situation where the host didn't know who they were, who the nominees were, or the winners, by facial recognition alone. And you get the feeling that a lot of the media doesn't know them either, because it's a very popular thing, but within its own community. I don't think it's hit that, like, people in the general public know who, like, certain high-end streamers are. Yeah. Or if, I think you'd have a hard time if you ask somebody who isn't already big into it, and if you said, like, who's your favorite esports player, they're going to say somebody like Ninja or PewDiePie, not knowing that there's a difference between a streaming influencer and a professional esports player.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Because I'm looking at these things. I recognize one of these names, Shopify Rebellion, which is a Canadian company, and they're literally in, like, the next town over from us. But the only name I know is the Toronto Ultra, now called the Toronto KOI or Toronto Koi. I'm not precisely sure anymore. And that's when the Call of Duty League had changed how it operates, rather than having all these teams from, like, everywhere, because I used to follow Team Caliber for a number of years. And then when those franchise things changed, and then when Major League Gaming had Halo a couple years ago, and when that kind of collapsed after Halo Infinite kind of fizzled out, the Canadian esports scene, I don't know what it's like. Like, I don't know. Are we playing Counter-Strike? Are we playing League?
Yeah.
Are we playing Valorant? Is it Call of Duty? Is it Halo? I don't know. And
it's not to be disrespectful, and the people, like, at the award show, they're laughing, playing it off. It's not to be disrespectful at all. It's a situation of, it's still, esports as a worldwide phenomenon is still a very small portion representative of gaming as a whole, even though there are fervent big fans worldwide, and there's a big collective that watch over in Korea and the States, and they do international competitions. There is a lot of that, but Canada is a small piece of the pie of an already small piece of the pie of the thing. So I think it's still, as far as, like, large fandom in Canada, it's still in its infancy. So there's going to be hiccups like that where people don't get it. They're like, this guy. And it also, I didn't help that I don't think any of them were there to accept awards.
Yeah, no. And they haven't esports in Canada, in my opinion, hasn't had the onboarding moment to welcome the general population in.
Yeah.
And we have had Call of Duty qualifiers and Call of Duty majors in Canada. We actually had one in Toronto last year, I want to say. We had
And
one
there
in
was
Kitchener last year.
it was the Call of Duty was Kitchener, I think, at the Odd.
Yeah, there were two events. There Odd was, I think, a qualifier or like a seasonal one, and then there was
Yeah.
the major in Toronto, which was like one of the big end of season events, if I recall correctly.
Yeah.
And again, it's just like I want esports to succeed because sometimes, like, I love playing Overwatch. I used to be a Call of Duty player. I've migrated from that franchise to Overwatch again after an absence since 2016. And it's nice to be back in that community. And I don't know, we just haven't had that moment yet.
And it's not a situation where, like, a specific. I know that there's been like esports on different cable channels and streaming things in Canada, but there hasn't been like. It wasn't like in the cultural zeitgeist. It's not like City TV or one of these things is like 1 hour on Sundays is esports. Like there hasn't been something that hit the general public yet to get the hype going.
I think when Canada has its own true breakout worldwide recognition name star, then maybe we'll have some kind of moment like that.
We need like a Ninja or like a PewDiePie, or we need somebody who has we need somebody who has 25 million subs, like something big, massive, and that brings an eye to it in at least one league up here. We need something like that. Now, that's not to say that it's not going to be bigger and bigger with like Gen Alpha, like the youngest kids that are growing up. Like you're seeing them ask in school, like, what do you want to be when you grow up? And a lot of them will be like, I want to be in esports. Like, like there's like where we used to say I want to be a movie director, I want to create games. A lot of them now are saying I want to play competitive gaming.
Yeah.
So
and
you might see that with the younger generation change that way.
100%. And then finally, just because again, we don't know a lot about some of these people, one thing we do know is this was an obvious one, but content creator / show of the year, TWIG was not nominated, which would have been really funny. I don't know what I would have done had we been nominated. I would have been like, wait, what? But no, Victor Lucas, the Electric Playground, there was no competition. I'm sorry, you're not beating me.
There are other category, like other people in the category, and I saw, there's some discourse I saw on people on Twitter, of course, right? And they're like, "Oh, he just got the nominations because everybody likes him. He's old. He's not one of these people that one of these young people." And I'm sorry, but the general public has not heard of most of the other people nominated.
Yeah, like I had no idea.
Like yes. It's like I had seen them in passing, and yes, they probably have larger overall followings in many cases. The difference here is you got to consider the voting pool is going to be people from the industry, and when somebody's been in the industry this long, and also over the last year, 2 years, I think it was at most, is when he relaunched showing the classic episodes on Saturdays on online, and then he's been doing interviews with getting people back that he had talked to 30 years ago that have retired from the industry. Some people are still in the industry. He's still going. And Vic was also receiving what was essentially like the Lifetime Achievement Award, like a special recognition award he received for basically starting televised and online content for gaming journalism in Canada. And not just Canada, in North America. There had been shows in Europe. The UK had like gaming-based journalism shows on television in the early 90s, but they only lasted a season or two.
Pro. We had
had GamePro, but like television, a weekly television show in 1997, there was nothing, and the States didn't get anything until the year 2000 or 2001.
Not entirely, because GamePro TV was on in the mid 90s, but I don't think it lasted more. Actually, you know what? Keep talking, because I'm very curious to know how long GamePro TV lasted. Not long.
Where a lot of the stuff happened in the States is when Tech TV merged with G4 in like 01, I think 2000 or 2001, something like that.
GamePro lasted 1 year, but they did it in 1991. And other than that, they had Video Power. Canada had Video in Arcade Top 10.
Yeah, but that's not a journalism show. It wasn't like a traditional like video magazine is essentially what he was doing.
Yeah.
And he did that in that format that everybody copied around 2000, 2001. They started copying it in the States. He had already been doing it for 4 years.
Yep.
So he, like, it's not that he's the first ever. He's the longest continuously running ever.
And he set the bar for what is acceptable.
Yeah.
And not even just like from a production standpoint, because like in one of his speeches, like the guy who did like his early graphics was a volunteer, and he designed the look of the show, and that stayed fairly consistent for a number of years. And then, like I said,
again, all the stuff on G4 basically copied the style.
Yeah, like without Victor Lucas, we do not have, truth be told, modern games journalism. And we don't have modern online presence without Victor Lucas.
Out of his shows that he produced, you end up getting stuff, not really like Attack of the Show was sort of like an offshoot. That was like a bit of MTV mixed with that style. Mm-hmm. But you had all the stuff on G4 with Sessler and that they were basically copying that style. And then you have like Game Trailers TV that evolved out of that was also in there. And then those people end up spinning off and do Easy Allies, and a lot of the YouTubers that are doing the similar style that are still keeping that style running. Now, Vic's shows has gone from national, international cable to then basically running it on a much smaller scale on YouTube and running it, but he still does it, and he still gets to do cool interviews and gets to go places and do stuff. And it's not that how many people can say they've had a broadcast career consistently for 29 years?
I mean, unless it's like a small regional newsman, not many. And I think that's rather impressive. Like I said, Victor has accomplished so much in this industry. I mean,
and
love him or hate him, he's gonna be the most consistent Canadian gaming thing too. And that's the thing too. Even though I just said love him or hate him, I can't think of anybody who's ever spoken bad about him personally.
The only thing people will say, and you see if you go on Twitter, is they'll say, they might say, oh, he's not giving it, he's not grilling this as much. It's like, if you go back and watch his stuff, he would give something a 5 out of 10 if it was bad. And this is back when you had to worry on television. Oh, are they just, is Activision not going to let us show their games? Nobody ever came at him for being, harsh on a game, because he was always honest. And, I've only met him sort of briefly once. It was actually last year at that Nintendo event when they showed off the Switch 2. And I went, and he was coming in as I was leaving. I waved and said, I can guarantee you he is the same off camera as he is on camera. There's there's no fake personality about him. That's who he is.
I have met Victor a couple times during my career. My longest interaction, maybe 10, 15 minutes with him. And you're right. I met him and one of his other co-hosts. I met him, Scott, and Jose at an event, I don't know, 15 years ago. And he literally is the same on and off the camera. And I think the reason he gets along with so many developers, I think he takes the approach you and I do. We're enthusiastic about being there. It doesn't matter whether we're covering Hello Kitty Island Adventure or Call of Duty Apocalypse Now.
We're here to have fun, and if it makes money, great. I mean, obviously, it's great if you do make money off stuff, but it's not worth being disingenuous or phony or anything. And he's just like a simple West Coast boy.
Yeah, and honestly, the best thing I ever learned from Victor, and this is true, if you're going to talk about a game and you don't like it, you don't have to be mean to it. And I come out of the era of the angry reviewer. Like, I came up with people like Angry Joe. I came up with people like Spoony and all those other people who are very successful. And I learned very quickly is if you shit on a game and are really vulgar about it, then studios cut you off. But if you take the approach of Victor of just being like, this game wasn't for me, I didn't like it because of XYZ, you're not being vindictive. You're not being malicious.
And you're not using, if a game is bad, it's bad, but you're not using them as a prop for yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
This comes from, like, Vic is from 10 years before the angry reviewer era, and
Yeah.
actually more like 11, 12 years before. You know, that
Mhm.
stuff really didn't start picking up until 09, really, you know, in major popularity. He had already been doing that for 12, 13 years. So, you know, he's from the era where like he had to carve a complete niche for himself, because the only people doing games journalism that were even doing things that were funny or presenting things as strange or goofy were the magazine writers, and that didn't necessarily translate into, like, you could be a funny writer and be terrible on camera.
Yep.
And he turned out to be somebody who could be a good writer and be great on camera.
Mm-hmm. So as
And I don't believe he ever wanted to be the. I think that was more of like he started doing it just because they had nobody else, and then it turns out he went from being like, you know, like a junior on camera intern guy to being the main host.
Yeah. So we're going to begin to close out the coverage here, and I'm going to do these slightly out of order. We're going to finish with Game of the Year, which will come as no surprise. But Fan Choice of the Year from the Entertainment Software, or it's the ESAC.
Yeah, you could. That was the one that people could vote on themselves.
Yeah, so that was Lost Records, Bloom and Rage. Not surprised, actually.
Passionate fandom. I voted for it.
Yep.
So.
Studio of the Year, Compulsion Games. Again, no
surprise.
Surprise.
Yeah, exactly.
And then Game of the Year, again, the key art that haunts my dreams. South of Midnight. We've literally hyped this game up over this entire segment. What more can we really say?
Is it because she's staring through your soul?
Well, again, it's so visually striking and it sticks with you, which is kind of what I dig about art. Like, literally, I wouldn't want a poster of that in my house because I feel its eyes would follow me around the room.
Yeah.
But, like, honestly, one of the things before we kind of close out our discussion on this, we did offer some technical and some positive feedback to the show's presenters and the people who put on the award show. This is something that's going to be growing over time.
Yeah,
and
because it started small a few years back. This is one of the first years where they're expanding to be larger, and it's neat to see. I've gone back and watched the previous broadcasts that they had on VOD. You can watch them on YouTube, and there has been incremental increases in both quality, production, pageantry, everything every year. I can see this getting bigger and bigger. It doesn't happen overnight. I think it's pretty much right where it needs to be, and like you said, the pacing, and it seems to be like the voting, the awards, the actual overall like setup and everything is great. I want to see where this goes in 5-10 years, man. I want to see like this could be like a big deal, like worldwide, even people watching.
Yeah, like I would love this to rival Jeff's show, the Game Awards, in terms of what it is. I think in terms of timing, it may need to change, but I like how this happens before Summer Games Fest, so people have something fun to go to Los Angeles with if they choose to participate in that, or as long as it takes place before, Broketober, I'm very thankful for.
Yeah.
And it gives someone something, it makes you feel good going into the summer, I think.
And I can say this too, to finish it off. It also coincided, it was planned around, there was like an indie expo going on at the same time, where a lot of the Canadian indie developers were all there showing off their games. So if you went to this event prior in the day, there was like an open house thing. You could go to the event and meet with some of the game devs, check out some new games that were being shown off. And there were some new games being shown off. There were some trailers for new things being shown there. So having it planned around, and this is still a very industry event, right? Like this, whereas the Jeff stuff has become very much the pageantry, the advertisers, it's the I guess like the Oscars, it's like the public facing thing that's very, very public. Whereas this had its roots more in like an industry award that you would see, like there's been European award shows that are like that in some of the states, like what is it, like the DICE Awards, things like that. Like they're more for people within the industry. And that's what this is, finding that balance. They're trying to find that balance between like a purely trade show, industry show, and then something that is more broadcast overall to the public. And I think it's well on its way to being that. And I'm really interested to see what it's like next year.
Yeah, like I really think the show has a lot of room to grow, but in a very positive manner. Yeah, so hopefully we will see more from the Canadian Game Awards in the future. So I guess, Alex, what happens next here on the show?
Well, we're going to take a break here and jump into one of my reviews. Not sure exactly which one it is yet, but that's what we're doing here with this, big section we have in the middle of our main show.
Okay, guys. Well, we'll see what Alex has coming up with, and then we'll catch you guys right after this.
I'm your new manager. You need to work this weekend.
PM Studios and Yummy Yummy Tummy, I love that name, have sent over a review copy of Table Flip Simulator for us to check out. I had an interesting fun time with this. I got a review code for the Nintendo Switch. Check it out. It is very indie. That's the best way to describe it. What if you mixed the destructive chaos and like cash calculating, aspects of the old school burnout games, where you'd race the cars and crash into the freeway and you see all the numbers go up higher the more car crashes stuff happen. What if you mix that with like a modern, I don't want to use the word slop, but like a modern game that has like something that would have happened during the pandemic where you watch these games with like these cartoony graphics and you're sort of controlling them, or a little bit wobbly, almost like you do like almost in VR, with like physics based world where like things can flip over, and mixing it with sort of like, I've seen stuff like the Karen simulator and stuff like that. What if you mixed all this stuff together and had it in one where like you're working at like, for instance, a retail store and people are going crazy on you, blah, 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 and you finally snap and you start throwing things around the room and crashing into people, and it shows all the damage being done and all the numbers go up and you just laugh yourself silly. I guess in a sense, it's a little bit what you have here, and you can have the cathartic release of anybody who's ever had to work retail and deal with the stupid customers. It doesn't matter. Customers are not always right. Customers are stupid in most cases. And that's what you're dealing with here. So basically, the game key features are you turn bad days into big flips. You step into everyday roles like a barista, a moviegoer, a teacher, and what you do is you get your revenge. For lack of a better term. You're freely able to wreak havoc in any location by experimenting with different items and targets to create uniquely destructive combinations and rack up different points. So each stage offers unique tasks and optional challenges for top scorers, whether it's serving up customers in a coffee shop, energizing a nightclub, or taking change while wrecking a not oval political office. All while encouraging creative thinking and total chaos. Big flipping boss fights, you show off your throwing skills in high stakes battles, from battling with a college professor to taking down a massive kaiju by hurling and smashing objects in increasingly epic ways. This is pretty wild. There was a bit of a loading time with some of this stuff because I could feel like this is going to be a game that I think needs a few patches here and there, maybe to increase performance ever so slightly, because it's a Switch code. I played it on my Switch 2, and I did notice there was some loading and pop-in initially, but again, indie sort of title. Very fun premise. Easily scalable to work on pretty much any platform. And if it works that well already, pretty well on the Switch and Switch 2, on any other platform, it's going to be perfectly fine. It's fun. I had a big chuckle with it. Played it a little bit with my brother when he came over to visit. I'm like, hey, you want to check this out? And we were laughing a bit. So I think it's the kind of thing, if you had some friends over, you play solo as a stress relief, as I mentioned, from your job. But if you have some friends over, you could each have a couple drinks or whatever, relax, and just take turns having fun and seeing how ridiculous, crazy shit can happen with this. And just watching the numbers fly and the people get the tables turned on them, for lack of a better term, is totally worth it. I'll put a link in the description of the show. I think you're probably going to get a kick out of this. It's actually pretty fun. So, Table Flip Simulator from our friends at PM Studio. And specifically Yummy Yummy Tummy. Again, I love that name for a company. Well worth your time. It's a great little indie title.
Those magnificent bastards. Color me kooky, but something very odd is going on around here.
You're not allowed to talk anymore.
Alrighty, so that is going to be the show this week. The oddball, different, whatever you want to call it, hybrid layout of a show that we're doing. We should be back to have at least one more regular show next week. And then we'll technically be off again from doing the main show the following week, because that happens to be the Summer Game Fest, all the game showcases that we're covering. So there will be likely a prototype podcast in its place, the Prototype, our gaming show, as we cover everything. We've sort of done a prototype preview of what we think our predictions between Ken and I of what we think there's going to be at Summer Game Fest and at Sony and all this sort of stuff. Still, as of this recording, there hasn't been an announcement of Nintendo doing a Nintendo Direct at some point. Usually it's probably going to be after, but it could be before. But as it stands now, we will have a bunch of episodes. We have a preview episode coming up. I think I'll have that out sometime this week or next. But then starting in June, we'll have a podcast covering the Sony State of Play, as well as a couple of the indies sort of bundled together. We'll do one on the Summer Game Fest night itself with whatever other shows like Day of the Devs, and if Devolver comes up with something, we'll do one with that. That should probably have Birdman on it. And then we will do one for a couple of the indie stuff that happens on the Saturday. The Sunday is Xbox and PC. So that would probably be Monday when we have that come out, which would be our regular usual time slot. And then we're probably, if Nintendo doesn't do anything, we'll probably have a wrap-up show that's sort of like our thoughts on it, state of gaming, all that sort of stuff that following week of the 8th, 9th, something like that. Beyond that, we also have Earth vs. Soups ready to go. This week's Earth vs. Soup is Earth vs. Soup episode 309, The Vampire's Ghost from 1945. We have a feature imperfect on the movies Supernova from the year 2000 and Sunshine from 2007. That is going to be coming out on the 29th. And then the following week's Earth vs. Soup is Plan 9 from Outer Space, the 1959 original, and a remake. And that will be out on that Thursday, the 4th. We also have a loose cannon on cinematic. Its title is just a cinematic intervention, and that's coming out on the 5th. Beyond that, we've got a bunch of other stuff that we're recording, editing, getting ready to go. I recorded a loose cannon myself with Aaron recently. We're not sure when that's coming, probably over the course of June or July. And we're getting ready and wrapping up production for stuff that's going to come out during the summer break when we take 2 months off from doing regular shows. We have stuff already recorded, brand new, evergreen things. And there will be the occasional break-in where we'll do coverage of something bigger, or like if there's a big news event, or if there is like a bunch of review stuff that we have to come out, we'll make sure we have a good review show out ready to sort of like we did the last few years where we have a couple of them sporadically throughout the summer with sort of updates on like, hey, here's what's happening in June. Here's the movies that are coming out now that we think you might want to check out, that sort of stuff. Beyond that, I know Birdman's got stuff cooking. There's new episodes of the spell book coming soon. I know he missed a week because he was very ill and he was not doing well, and he felt bad that he had to miss a week on the radio show for that. But rest assured, there's new episodes that have been recorded, and they're going to be coming out every Wednesday, noon at CFRU Radio, as well as 4 or 5 p.m. it hits our syndication. So if you miss it live, you can always check it out on our site later on that evening. So yeah, that's going to do it for the show this week. Hope everybody's had a good holiday. It's been sort of a blur in Canada for our holiday the previous week and then now this. So we hope everybody's doing well, and we'll talk to you again next time, right here on thisweekingeek.net.
At no point in your rambling, incoherent response were you even close to anything that could be considered a rational thought.
Thanks for listening to this episode of This Week in Geek. Hungry for more? Check out our website at thisweekingeek.net. You can subscribe to the podcast, browse our Twitter and Instagram, and leave your thoughts on today's topics. If you'd like to give us some feedback, send us an email at feedback@thisweekingeek.net. Tune in next time, and remember,
Lower your shields and surrender your listenership.
We would be honored if you would join us.
Thank you for your cooperation. Good night.